guys, I'm Jeremiah Patterson. I love learning about presidential history, and I just love studying it because it's so fascinating. James Comey, former FBI director that was fired by President Donald Trump. I'm reading this book. I'm also reading this very big, thick book, Presidents of War by Michael Beschloss. Let's talk about this for a second. Michael Beschloss is an NBC News presidential historian. Let's read up on some of his biography. Michael Beschloss is the author of 9 books on presidential history, including most recently the New York Times bestseller, The Conquerors and Presidential Courage, as well as 2 volumes on Lyndon Johnson's White House States. He is also editor of the #1 global bestseller, Jacqueline Kennedy, Historic Conversations on Life with John F. Kennedy. He is the NBC News presidential historian and PBS NewsHour contributor, and he has received an Emmy and 6 honorary degrees. He is on Twitter at BeschlossDC. This is Michael Beschloss, and one of my favorite stories in this book, I actually haven't gotten in deep into the book yet, but one of the most fascinating wars in U.S. history that I think is the War of 1812. When the British took the White House, and Michael Beschloss is going to kind of explain it into the book when I get to that part, is the War of 1812 when the British took the White House. I like to sometimes consider myself a presidential historian because I'm so interested. I started studying presidential history in second grade, and now I'm here, and I've improved a lot. I find the War of 1812 very fascinating because when the British took the White House, Dolly Madison, while the White House is on fire, if you didn't already know this, while the White House is on fire, Dolly Madison grabbed the portrait of George Washington and she took it out of the White House. While the White House is on fire, she took it out the house and she ran out with her husband, James Madison. Now, when a house is on fire, they're going to take what they can and get out. A really panicked person is just going to go and get out if the fire is really bad. But the fire in that case was really bad, and that was a very devastating time for our country when the British took the White House again, because we had already declared our independence after George Washington was the first president. Then we had John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Then the British were mad, so they came and attacked us when we had James Madison in office as 4th president of the United States. And so I think it's very fascinating. And I consider Dolly Madison one of the most fascinating first ladies in our country's history, next to Jacqueline Kennedy and Nancy Reagan and Rosalind Carter and Edith Wilson and all of these famous people who have stood beside their husbands and watched as they're building up the country and uniting the country and encouraging the country to go on and continue and do better. But I think it's really courageous what Dolly Madison did there. When the White House is on fire, she grabbed the portrait of George Washington and she got out of the White House. Dolly Madison, a hero. We're going to read up on some of her history in just a sec. Dolly Madison once said, "Habit and hope are the crutches which support us through the vicissitudes of life." Dolly Madison and her husband, James, made one of the oddest matches in presidential history. He was 17 years older, shorter, and infinitely less gregarious than his voluble wife. She could charm a crowd with her smile. He was awkward and uncomfortable in public. So I'm going to go to the part where the British have burned down the White House. Well, excuse me, it actually doesn't. Yeah, it actually doesn't say so in there. It's either the British burned down the White House because they were mad, or the British burned down the White House because they just wanted to. See, at this time, the United States we already had our independence from Great Britain. We're like, okay, yeah, we've got our independence now. We formed our perfect union. We have an executive branch. We have a legislative branch, and we have a judicial branch. We've already formed it with the founding fathers who wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. So our country's already formed. The British is mad. The British is furious that we have a fantastic government. And King Charles, or whoever the king was at the time, says, okay, you know what? Let's send some people over there to invade the United States. And that is what happened, the War of 1812, when the British burned down the White House, and Dolly Madison, the fourth First Lady of the United States, Dolly Madison, saved the portrait of George Washington from burning down in that White House. How courageous. Sorry about that. Let's continue up on different presidential history. So did you know that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, FDR, was the longest serving president? He was the 32nd president of the United States, and Franklin Delano Roosevelt served 4 terms. Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 32nd president of the United States, served from 1944 to, it was 1933 to 1944, which is approximately, I may have that math wrong in a bit, but 4 terms is 16 years. He was the longest serving president. Congress then orchestrated and put together a law saying that only a president can serve 2 terms, which is 8 years. And let's put this into perspective, as for those of you who don't get it, as if when a president is running for election, he's running for office, he wins that election, he's president of the United States for 4 years. He runs for re-election, he's president of the United States for another 4 years. That's 8 years. But if the president of the United States runs for election and he wins, he's president for 4 years. But if he runs for re-election, or if he doesn't run for re-election, he is only a 4-term president like Lyndon B. Johnson. He didn't want to run because of the Vietnam War, and it was just too much pressure. So he was only a 4-term president. We have other various 8-term presidents and 4-term presidents. In fact, the shortest serving president was William Henry Harrison. He only served 1 month in office. William Henry Harrison only served 1 month in office. Zachary Taylor was poisoned, and he only served 1 year in office. John F. Kennedy was shot and killed in a car in Dallas, Texas, and he only served 1,000 days in office. So these are the spectrums of the longest and the shortest serving presidents of our nation. So that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you. I just wanted to give you guys sort of a historical briefing. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm Jeremiah Patterson, and share this video with a friend.